Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, Momuji, and good morning, everyone. My name is Nauli Rachma Simanjuntak, and today I'm going to present my second project for syntax class. In this short presentation, I will explain the topic of deep structure, which is one of the key concepts in transformational generative grammar. I will try to explain this slide in my own words and give some easy examples to help everyone understand. What is deep structure? Let's start with the definition. In transformational generative grammar, an approach developed by Noam Chomsky, deep structure is the basic structure of a sentence before any changes are made to it. It's also called deep grammar or D-structure. This deep structure shows the core meaning of a sentence. It contains the important grammatical parts like the subject, verb, and object before we apply rules like passive voice, questions, or negations. For example, the deep structure John hit Fred can be transformed into different server structures like John hit Fred, same as deep structure, or Fred was hit by John, passive voice. Even though the form is different, the deep meaning is still the same. Characteristic, the deep structure. Now, let's look at what deep structure does. At this level, the basic grammatical rules are very clear. Subject is who does the action, verbs is the action, and object is who receives the action. For example, deep structure John hits Fred, John is subject, hits is verb, and Fred is object. This structure is abstract. You don't say it out loud, but it helps us understand how sentences are built in our minds before we speak or write them. Next is transformations. Now we move to transformation. Once the deep structure is formed, we can transform the sentence into different forms. These are called syntactic transformations. Let's look at an example. John hit Fred. This can be transformed into passive. Fred was hit by John. Question, who did John hit? Negative, John didn't hit Fred. These are all examples of server structure that comes from the same deep structure. Another example, the teacher gave the student a book. We can ask, what did the teacher give the student? Again, the core meaning remains, but the form changes. That's the main idea of transformations. Deep structure and universal grammar. Deep structure is also connected to something called universal grammar, which is the idea that all human languages share a common structure deep down. For example, in English, John eats an apple. In Japanese, John garingo taberu. Even though the words and grammar look different, the deep structure is still the same. John is subject, eats is verb, and apple is the object. Next is semantic interpretation. Deep structure also helps us understand meaning, especially in three ways. Number one, idioms or metaphors. For example, kick the bucket means to die, not actually kicking a bucket. Deep structure helps us understand the true meaning. Number two, ambiguities. For example, flying planes can be dangerous. Is it dangerous to fly planes, or the planes that are flying dangerous? Number three, logical forms. It helps us figure out the logic behind a sentence, especially when using words like not, only, or every. So deep structure gives us the hidden meaning behind what we see or hear. To conclude, deep structure is the basic underlying form of a sentence. It helps us understand the core meaning even when the service form changes. It is important in linguistics because it shows universal grammar and helps with interpretation, translation, and language learning. We use it to understand how sentences are formed and how transformations work. In this presentation, I will explain what server structure is, how it's formed, and why it's important in both communication and language learning. I will try to explain it in my own words and give some simple examples for better understanding. Definition of server structure. Let's start with the definition. Server structure is the final version of a sentence, the one we actually say, hear, write, or read. This is what we use in real communication. I like deep structure, which is more abstract and exists in our minds. Server structure is visible and audible. So for example, when someone says she's going to school, that's the server structure. It's what the sentence sounds like and looks like after all the grammar rules are applied. Next, phonological realization. Server structure also affects how we pronounce or write a sentence. This includes the word order like subject first, verb second, the intonation, how the voice rises and falls, stress, which words are emphasized, and punctuation in writing. For example, she is going to school sounds natural and clear because of this server structure. If we change the word order or stress the wrong word, it might sound awkward or even confusing. So the server structure helps listener or readers understand the sentence quickly. Server structure is derived from deep structure. Server structure is not random. It comes from something called the deep structure. The deep structure is the basic sentence that contains the subject, verb, and object before any changes happen. Then transformational rules are applied to turn it into the final sentence. Here are examples of transformations. WH movement. You will see what becomes what will you see. Passivization. The dog bites the man becomes the man is bitten by the dog. Also includes negation, inversion, and contraction. So one deep idea can have many service forms depending on how we transform the sentence. Language variability at the service. This slide shows that different languages can express the same meaning in different ways at the service level. For example, in English, we say she likes apple, but in Japanese, which literally means, as for her, apples are liked. The deep meaning is the same. Someone likes the apple, but the service structure is different. This is why translation usually focuses on the meaning, not just the exact sentence structure. Server structure in speech and writing. Server structure also helps us in both speaking and writing. In speech, it affects intonation, stress, and pauses, and in writing, it affects punctuation, grammar, and clarity. For example, let's eat, grandma versus let's eat, grandma. These two sentences uses the same words, but the punctuation changes the meaning completely. The first one is an invitation to eat. The second one is, well, something very different. So server structure really matters in how clearly we express ourselves. So to sum it up, server structure is the sentence form that we use in real life. It's what we hear, read, and speak. It comes from deep structure after applying transformation. It plays an important role in pronunciation, clarity, grammar, and communication. And it can even affect meaning and humor, especially when small changes like punctuation create a big difference. So understanding server structure is important if we want to master a language, whether we are speaking, writing, translating, or analyzing sentences. I will explain 6 syntax-free diagrams using my own words. Each diagram shows how a sentence is structured in grammar, and I will also explain the deep structure, the original meaning, before any transformation happens. So let's get started. Diagram 1. It says the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. This sentence is often used because it has all the letters of the alphabet. What the tree shows, the sentence S is divided into noun phrase and verb phrase. Noun phrase is the quick brown fox and the verb phrase is jumps over the lazy dog. Inside the verb phrase, there's a prepositional phrase, which is over the lazy dog. Let's analyze the deep structure. There is a subject, the quick brown fox, the one doing the action, and the verb jumps. And there is prepositional phrase over the lazy dog to show direction or location. There is no transformation here. What you see is very close to the deep structure. It's a simple sentence with clear meaning. Next diagram, the girl who is wearing a red dress is dancing. This sentence has a relative clause, who is wearing a red dress. Let's analyze the tree. What the tree shows, the main noun phrase is the girl who is wearing a red dress, and the verb phrase is dancing. The clause who is wearing a red dress describes the girl. Let's analyze the deep structure. There are actually 2 sentences behind this. First sentence is the girl is dancing, and the second sentence is the girl is wearing a red dress. In deep structure, both ideas are separate, but in the surface structure, they are combined using the word who, which is a relative pronoun. This is an example of WH movement, where who moves to the front of the clause. Next diagram, it says Zevano saw the Yehezkiela with the telescope. This sentence is ambiguous. Why? Because it has more than one possible meaning. These first three shows one of them. What the three shows, noun phrase, Zevano, treat as a subject, verb phrase, saw the Yehezkiela with the telescope, and the prepositional phrase with the telescope is attached to the verb. Let's analyze the deep structure. The subject is Zevano, and the verb is saw, and there is the instrument with the telescope. This means that Zevano used the telescope to see Yehezkiela. In the deep structure, the action is Zevano saw Yehezkiela using a telescope. Next diagram, still the same sentence. This is the second interpretation of the same sentence. What the tree shows, the prepositional phrase with the telescope, is now part of the noun phrase. So, the Yehezkiela with the telescope is treated as one phrase. Let's analyze the deep structure. The subject is still the same, Zevano. The object is quite changed. The Yehezkiela who had the telescope. It means that Yehezkiela had the telescope, not Zevano. And the deep structure is like Zevano saw the person who had the telescope. This is a good example of how structure changes meaning even with the same words. Next diagram. It says, she believes that the earth is round. This sentence has a complement clause introduced by that. What the tree shows, noun phrase, she, verb phrase, believes that the earth is round. The word that introduces another sentence, a complementary phrase. Let's analyze the deep structure. There are two full sentences. The first sentence is, she believes something. And the second sentence is, the earth is round. And the deep structure, they are separate. Then transformation puts them together and the second sentence becomes the object of the verb believes. This kind of structure is common in reported speech or mental verbs like think, know, hope, etc. Alright, last diagram. The house where I grew up has been demolished. This sentence uses a relative clause with location, where I grew up. What the tree shows, noun phrase, the house where I grew up, and the verb phrase is has been demolished. Inside the noun phrase, we have a relative clause introduced by where. Let's analyze the deep structure. There are two original ideas. I grew up in a house, and the last is the house has been demolished. And the deep structure, the phrase in the house becomes where and moves to the front of the clause. Also, the verb grew up is a phrasal verb which stays together even when the words are split into three. This is another example of WH movement, where a relative word replaces a deeper structure. So, from all 6 diagrams, we can learn, number 1, syntax trees help us see how sentences are structured grammatically. Deep structure shows the original core meaning before we change the sentence. Transformation like WH movement and ambiguity are used to make sentences more complex. Surface structure is what we say, but deep structure helps us understand the true relationship in a sentence. Alright, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much, Mamuchi, and thank you so much for everyone for listening. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them. Goodbye.